Welcome to Unexpectedly Successful. Join us to hear the raw and genuine stories of women founders who have created their own pathways to possibilities.
Hello, your host here, Griselda Martinez, bringing you live stories of women like you and me in their most authentic journey as becoming a business owner. In today's episode, I spoke to a very incredible, inspirational woman, Shannon Walker, who is committed to doing her best, whatever that may be, and whose partial life and business foundation is to never quit, because if you quit, for sure you will fail. Let's get started.
Well, thank you, Shannon Walker, for being here.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
Awesome. So for my audience, Shannon Walker is a successful businesswoman, founder of not just one business, but 3 different ones. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of them. The first one is she's been in business for over 30 years in a business called Man's Best Friend. So guess what it is about? It's a dog boarding and training facility in which she helps people like you and me train their dogs. She is located in Battle Ground, Washington State. And it is super exciting to hear the number 3 item that I'm going to mention shortly, because then this is an opportunity for all the audience here listening. Number 2 is a non-for-profit organization that she founded. And the mission of this organization is to train and give professionally trained services dogs to veterans with PTSD. So it's a very great mission. Thank you for that work that you do, and we'll get into it a little bit. But for the audience, if you're interested, we're going to have an episode exclusively to dig deeper into what has been this journey for Shannon to create this non-for-profit, operate it, and then continue to be successful there. And the third business, which is a recent spin-off from Shannon, leveraging on all this knowledge, 30 years of experience, it is Shannon Walker Unlimited. And this is where the most interesting part for people who are not located in Washington comes in, because what she's going to do is she's going to package all this knowledge, information, experience, and wisdom gathered through 30 years of work to make all this relevant information into accessible information for people not only outside Washington, in the US and beyond. So she's going to the global market through information, content online, YouTube, online courses, books, ebooks, etc. So we're excited to hear more about that. So the first question that we have for you here is, tell me what Shannon means for you. What being Shannon means to you.
Oh, wow. So I appreciate the question. I've always talked about dogs. I've always talked about my nonprofit, but I don't talk about myself much. So this will be a little bit of a stretch for me. But, you know,
Thank you for being vulnerable.
You're welcome. You have to be strong. You have to, no matter what comes in life. I'm over 50 years old, and life didn't go the way I thought it was going to. And out of trauma, you find out who you really are, and you make decisions, you make life choices to survive. And that's where a lot of my businesses have come from. So if I was to say, who is Shannon to me, it's you have to be strong, and you do it afraid, and you never quit. And you push further than you ever thought you needed to, because you got people relying on you. And so if I was to consider myself of what that means, if I was to encapsulate a description, and I don't say that in an arrogant way, I say that as it was a necessity. It was a necessity in my life to be the mom for my boys and to do what I needed to do for my family. And so I guess that would be my answer to that.
Wow. So many questions that come with that answer, Shannon. So thank you for encapsulating it in such a strong statement, being strong and doing it out of necessity. Can you tell us a little bit more about you concluding that that's Shannon being strong? Not necessarily by wanting to, but having to, and being how you approach life?
Well, I think that, so to answer that the best I can, I think that a lot of times we make decisions in our life because of circumstances that happen. And when I was younger, my family, we were fine until we weren't fine. And I remember us not having money. And I remember at the age of 15, seeing the struggle, seeing everything we used to do as a family to spend time together, our toys, different things like that. I saw them all go. I saw our cupboards be empty. I saw things like that. We were never homeless, but I remember the feeling of desperation. And I remember thinking to myself, when things happen in life, we make decisions to ourselves. We'll make a statement to ourselves that is a life statement. You don't know you're making a life statement, but I was telling myself, I will never not have money. And at age 15, I immediately started to work for myself. So 40 years ago, my first month, I made $500 cash. Well, 40 years ago, that's quite a bit when you're 15.
That's a lot of money.
Yes, it was. And I just put an ad in the paper and I was like, I will do anything. I helped old ladies clean their cupboards. I helped people move. I did whatever I needed to do. And I got a lot of that work ethic from my father. He modeled it for me. And I'm very aware that what we model for our children are life skills that are either going to set them for success or it's going to hurt them. And so I was very aware of all that, even when I was raising my own boys. But with that decision at the age of 15, I always looked at, I worked 3 jobs. As I grew up, I just always worked. I helped pay for the household. I helped because we were a family and those were our values. And that's what I did. But I always kind of looked like I wanted to be rescued. And I was hoping I would be rescued when I got married. And it didn't turn out like that. And I thought I would actually be able to have somebody kind of take care of me. Not like I was going to sit on that couch and eat bonbons all day, but I thought I would have somebody take care of me and that I could have that feeling of safety and security. And that didn't happen. And early on in my marriage, when I came to the realization that was not going to happen, and I had beautiful twin boys, I saw that I had to be the provider for my boys. And that's where my that's where my first business got birthed, out of a need. So many, when life hits, we can either make positive choices that are going to add value, or we can make destructive choices. But because of my foundation, raised in a Christian home and my relationship with Jesus Christ, I did my best to make the best choices. It doesn't mean I was perfect, but it means that I made more good choices than not. And it worked for me, and it helped me be able to provide for my children and provide for myself. And that's really what set me on the trajectory of, just surviving, making decisions, working hard, being determined, And so I don't know if that answers your question, but it's, everybody has a choice when because life happens to all of us. And so everybody has a choice about what they're going to do with it. And I chose to, in this area, take control and just do my best to make money and be an entrepreneur. And I didn't know that I was being an entrepreneur. I never aspired to any of that. I just knew I had to have money and I had to take care of my boys.
Wow. So many things that so many more questions about that. So the first one is, you said at age of 15, you put an ad on the paper. So tell us a little bit about that moment. What came to your mind? How did you know putting an ad? Who helped you? Was it just inspiration from your father? How did Shannon get to that point to say, I need money and this is what I need to do right now?
I don't know how I knew that. I don't remember asking anybody about it. I knew that I just needed a job and I couldn't drive yet. So my parents drove me, and it was just in my mind. I just knew that. My dad had an incredible work ethic. He worked so hard and he was an incredible achiever. And I think that it was modeled for me to be creative like that. My dad was such a go-getter. And so I don't know where the idea came from. Honestly, I'm sure my parents had to have helped me with it a little bit. I don't remember that moment, but I'm sure they did. I do know they weren't there cleaning the cupboards out with me and helping me move. They probably helped me with the ad. but it just grew from there. And then I ended up cleaning houses. I had my own house cleaning business. I would do like 13 houses a week. I did that all the way through high school. And
wow, 13 houses a week through high school.
Yeah. Well, so I probably started that when I was like more of a senior in high school, but I only had a couple hours of class a day. So I could leave and do, at least 2 houses, sometimes 3, you know what I mean? And so if I do, maybe it wasn't 13, but it was like at least 10, 11, 12 at times, depending on, but yeah, it was a lot, but I figured if I wasn't doing anything, I needed to be making money. I didn't have a social life. I've just always been driven. And it's not about wanting money. It was about achieving. And I didn't know that was, but if in my Clifton Strength Finders, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a really depth. Okay. So my number 2 is achievement. And so I think that had a lot to do with the way God created me to be. And so that's just kind of where I've always been, is that I just said yes. As long as it was legal, I pretty much said yes to whatever people asked me to do. If it was trading time for money, I was doing it.
So you saw an opportunity and you raised your hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when I actually worked at a Taco Bell, I was the one. It's like, if you don't want your hours, call me, and I would always do it. So I always had overtime. I was like, I will do it. And so, it's just, and looking back, it was just normal to me. It's not like I aspired to be anything or do anything. It's just, that was normal to me. And I was reaching my goal. We had a need. And so I knew that that's what we needed to do to fulfill it. So.
Wow. Okay. So just to recap and highlight this fact, by the age of 17, you had already 2 businesses going.
So yeah, I did.
You were a serial entrepreneur by the age of 16 or 17.
Yeah, I was. I was cleaning houses still, and I was working at Taco Bell, and I worked at and then I also, through all it easily, I had 3 jobs all at one time. I was the manager of an ice cream shop, and then I worked at a newspaper graphic arts place, and then I was still cleaning houses. So it was like, a lot.
Okay, I'm going to flip the question from you to your parents. What do you think that seeing this beautiful person on the rise meant for your parents? Because they had to see you just growing and blooming.
Makes me emotional. I've always felt incredibly loved by my parents. They were like, as a daughter, I couldn't have asked for a better mother or a better father. And I know that they were extremely proud, but at the same time, we were just a family that loved each other. So it didn't matter. We just helped each other. It wasn't like I did anything extraordinary because I was putting the money into the family. It was like we were a family. And I was just doing what they modeled for me. And we did it as a family. They're incredibly proud. My father passed away December 20th of 2011. And that was just, totally the hardest day of my life. But they were very proud. But they modeled it for me. And we were a family. And so it wasn't that it was expected. It was always appreciated, but we were a family. So.
Wow. Well, how beautiful, Shannon. Wow. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So at age of 17, you had your second business. What happened after that for Shannon Entrepreneur? Multi-entrepreneur efforts.
Yeah. So I ended up about the age of 20 to 21. I ended up getting a job at Fleetwood where we built RVs. And I was on a manufacturing line. And that job, that income replaced all 3 of my jobs. So I could only get one job and make enough money to live on my own. And so that's what I did up until I got married. I went from making RVs to in Washington State, and then I moved to Tennessee. And so that Fleetwood plant for that company, I was making mobile homes, if you can believe that. I was running an air hose and a nail gun and a ladder and using chop saws and It was such hard work. I think now when I think about how hard I work or whatever now in my days, but still, that was the hardest labor job I have ever had in my life. It was so much. Yeah. So I was really glad when I got to leave that. And I left that when I got pregnant with my boys after I got married. But yeah, so I moved out of all three businesses just for that one job, working for somebody else, trading time for money. Everything that I did was because that was the business model of it. I worked this many hours cleaning a house. It was like always trading time for money. So I didn't have a way to create residual income like I do now. So that's really, yeah. So anyway, but I also knew that wasn't the way to become wealthy. Is because my dad because if you trade time for money, you were limited to the amount of days and hours in a day. And there's only so many days in a week.
So wealthy, please tell us about that topic. What is wealthy? How did you recognize that you wanted to accumulate wealth, create wealth, and then how you went about it?
My dad had always taught me that, in the Bible, it says, that you want to create an inheritance for your children and your children's children. And my father was very big on legacy. And because, my family, love my father and my mother so much, and our family was extremely tight. But I realized that through all of the teaching, the positive mental attitude and everything that my dad was doing business-wise and multi-level marketing-wise. And so I listened to a lot of teaching through John Maxwell and Zig Ziglar and some different, amazing, entrepreneurs like that. I already started to learn these principles. So wealthy to me just doesn't mean money in the bank. Yes, you have to have money because money is a tool for us to have more options in our life. And it is more comfortable to live with money than it is without money. That's kind of a given, you know what I mean? But I don't do what I do for money. I do what I do for purpose because it's on my heart to help people. And I take that and I've taken the vehicle that I use to help people, and God has blessed it. And I make money with it. You know what I mean? It's like I have my talent. So yeah, to me, wealthy is, being debt free and owning homes and things like that, and having money in the bank, being able to be a blessing, being able to support orphanages, being able to, just be in God's hands on this earth. To me, that's wealthy, but wealthy isn't just in that form. It's in family, and it's in health, and it's in relationships, because I've had money in the bank and I haven't been able to sleep all night.
Wow.
For months, because you can't sleep because you don't have peace. So wealth is like a combination of all of that, about being healthy as a human in your mind, your body, and your spirit and your soul, and having money in the bank.
Wow. That's the prettiest, most comprehensive definition for wealth I've ever heard. So I'm going to keep that in mind for sure for the future. Shannon, you also talked about your purpose. You walked us through age 21 when you started in the RV manufacturing. Then what happened after you said you stopped that job when you had your boys? What happened after that for Shannon in her journey as an entrepreneur?
So I got married, and then I got pregnant with my boys. And when I got, because they were twins, they were 6'5" and 8'11". That is how huge I was. And I worked all the way up to like a month before they were born. That was like, I was just pushing a broom, but still I was like, so when but through.
Wow. Just a moment to acknowledge that. Okay. Just the fact of being pregnant, but being pregnant in that job that you described, that's like, kudos to you. More power to you, Shannon.
Yeah. I was huge. It was ridiculous, but it was, so our goal is that I didn't want anybody else to raise. We didn't, the gentleman I was married to, we didn't want somebody else to raise our boys and put their values on them. So we wanted to be debt free. We wanted to have some money in the bank. So I was going to quit my job, and I did quit my job, and I was not going to go back to work. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom and raise Jared and Jacob. And then within the first year of their little life, maybe a year and a half, I saw that I was going to have to go back to work, because he wasn't going to provide for us like we needed. And so I had started training dogs prior to getting married, and I started to compete in the Schutzen sport. And Schutzen is a sport out of Europe. It's like protection. It's protection, tracking, and obedience. It's like police dog work, but it's highly competitive. It's extremely precise. It's on a point system. And so I was starting to get into that and compete. And when I would be out training my own personal dog, people would come up and ask me for help. And I had boys over there at the park, whatever. I mean, they were just littles. I mean, but they were like, maybe they weren't even at the park yet because they were too little for that. But I'd be out training and practicing with my own dog, and people would come up and ask me for help. And when I realized that I had to make money for my family, for my boys, I thought, if I could just train 4 dogs a month for people, I could make enough money to be a stay-at-home mom, train dogs out of the house, and I could support the family like that. And that's my goal. What I saw, I never set out to be my own business owner. I was never a dream of mine to have businesses. What I've done was birthed out of need. It was birthed out of need. And even growing up, I just knew I loved animals, but I had no aspirations to be a dog trainer. I had no aspirations for anything like that. But because I did get involved in the Schutzen sport, and then when the need was there, that was what I was thinking. If I can just train 4 dogs a month, and it was going to be $300 a dog, that would have brought me $1,200 a month. Then I can be a stay-at-home mom and work, and then my life would be good. And that's what I saw. And I remember the first time I actually had 4 dogs, I just felt like I arrived. And I just went around and I just told everybody I was a dog trainer. And I made these. So this beautiful billionaire woman, she calls it janky. So I was making these janky flyers, some kind of just a silhouette of a German Shepherd dog on it. And I'm like, and I just told everybody, I'm like, I'm a new dog trainer in town. I'm a new dog trainer in town. And I was in this really tiny town, but I was just telling everybody. And then they'd call me, and a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. I just said yes to everything. I didn't even know how to fix half the stuff people were wanting me to fix. I was just said yes. And then I would call the trainers that I worked with and go, how do I fix this? How do I do this? And I got started. I didn't know enough to be afraid or to wonder. I didn't see the big picture. I saw 4 dogs. And I just I just saw 4 dogs. And honestly, that's how I've done every business that I've done. I don't see it in that and maybe my dad always says you don't know what you don't know. And that was probably God's blessing for me, because if I knew too much, then I would have known too much to be afraid of failing. I would have known how hard it was. And in all the businesses and all of everything I've accomplished, all the things that I've accomplished in my life, if I knew how hard it would have been, then I might have been afraid. But maybe, I don't know. But I didn't see that. I just knew I needed money in this case. And I could see 4 dogs a month. I could see that. And I already had enough people asking me. And like I said, I knew just enough to be dangerous. And so that's what I saw. Failing or what it was going to look like, I didn't even think like that. I didn't. I knew I was going to do it, and I just don't quit.
So if something didn't go right, then it was just a proven way that it wasn't working that way, and you'll find a different way.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, of course, challenges come. You just figure it out and move forward. You don't, it's a bump in the road. I think in general, most things in life that really are tangible, people stop way before their potential is reached, and they'll never know what they could have actually done because they allow limited thinking to stop them. You know what I mean? And I didn't, like I said, I didn't even think like that. I just knew I could see 4 dogs. And then I went to 6 dogs and 8 dogs and 10 dogs. And then within a year, I ended up with 24 dogs at my property in runs. And on a quarter, we had like a little tiny quarter of an acre in this new development. And I had to get out of there because my business was growing. And I was like, I got to get out of here. We've got to have land so I can build a kennel. And so we had to build a business, build a big, we had to, so I have 100 dog kennel now on 4 acres.
Oh my God. 100 kennel, 4 acres. Wow.
And that's boarding and training. But anyway, but the growth pushed to the next thing because you adapt. You're like, okay, now I have this need. So now we have to do this. Okay, well, now we have this. So we need to do this. And that's how that ended up, yeah. People say, how did you start Man's Best Friend? I didn't see Man's Best Friend. I didn't see $1 million business. Plus, I just saw 4 dogs and I could stay home with my boys.
Wow. So you mentioned that goal, and you said, I need to reach $1,200 a month. And with this price, I need 4 of them.
Yes.
It's a very simple way. And you said something about simplicity. It's such a practical way of seeing it that flips the story from, oh my God, all the things that I need to do, to like, just take the next step. 4 dogs, you said, 8 dogs, then 20, then now 100. Just wow. That I love that, flipping the coin to just, it's 4 dogs.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that in anything that we start, we see what we see, and then we can move on. And then as we grow and our thinking changes and our perspectives broaden and our confidence and our experience grows, well, then you end up with just more influence, more impact, more knowledge, more perspective, and you just grow with it, and that's all I know. If anybody ever told me I did anything extraordinary, I would be like, no, I didn't. I just did what comes next. That's all I did. And that's what I tell my boys. It's like, I don't even know I may not know how to do this, whatever it's going to be, but I always know what to do next. It might just be one thing, but I'm going to do that one thing. And then the next one thing is going to happen. Exactly.
So just take the next step, whatever that may be, one step at a time.
That's right.
My dad told me once, and this is a quote from my book that I don't remember which one it is, but any long journey starts with the first step, right? Just take that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So then what happened after you bought this 4 acres of land, and then you saw this 100 dog kennel ready to go? And then how did that tie into your non-for-profit, and then now Shannon Walker Unlimited, which captures so much of what I'm hearing right now, that name alone?
So, yeah, I know, right? I competed as I was building Man's Best Friend. I competed in Schutzhund and competed regionally, and then ended up in 2003. I competed in Europe and competed against 13 countries and won. And I was supposed to be a team of Americans to go over there and everything. And then everybody else was like, they were falling off. My mother and I went to Diest, Belgium with a Rottweiler by ourselves for me to compete. Yeah, it was crazy. And it was like, but I'd worked for 6 months every day. I trained every day and I wanted to go. Well, I'm saying all that to say, my marriage was not good. I was married for 15 years. And when I came back in 2003, that was the beginning of the end of, that was just a bad night, police, things like that. I took my boys and left. And because you asked me what happened, Man's Best Friend, Northwest Battle Blaze or whatever. So now I'm single, raising 11-year-old boys. And praise God for my business, because they never lacked anything, because God had prepared a way for me back then, not only to help support the family, but also then to be on my own with them. And that's always been incredible provision that God has blessed and protected the business, because we can do everything we can do, but it was God's hands of protection that just in the business world, just, he's just always blessed me tremendously. And I'm so grateful to him, because yes, I work extremely hard, but God breathes on it. And it's just amazing. So now I'm single, and my dad, to the nonprofit very quickly, how I started that is my dad taught me to believe in God, family, and country. And when you're in the presence of a veteran, you're in the presence of a hero, even though he never considered himself one. So my dad served during the Korean War. And so he was a patriot. And so he taught me to have a reverence for our men and women who served our country and our freedom. And so when I had a veteran come into my business, Man's Best Friend, he wanted his personal dog to be trained to be a service dog. And so I assessed his dog and I talked to him and everything. So long story short, I took his yellow lab in. Her name was Sammy. I took her in, trained her for quite a few months. And then when it was time for Kevin to come train with me to learn how to navigate life with his service dogs, I'd trained service dogs before. I just didn't train service dogs for veterans, especially, with PTSD. So when I was training with him, and of course, we're out in public, we're doing everything that a lot of people with PTSD and invisible wounds of war don't want to do. I saw him find courage inside himself to lead his dog places he was afraid to go alone. And I saw him find courage to be for her what he needed to be. And out of all the things I'd accomplished in my life, out of all the competitions, working with police departments, all the stuff I'd done, when I watched Kevin walk away after his final testing with his dog, I've really, truly felt like I significantly made the difference in somebody's life.
Wow.
I thought, if in my simple-minded thinking, I thought if I can just adopt dogs out of shelters, I can gift them and I can say, thank you for my freedom.
Wow.
And so I'm just going to start a nonprofit. I had no idea what I was doing.
Why not starting a non-for-profit?
Yeah, I did. I was like, how do you do that? I went right out to the shelter and I adopted 5 dogs and I got started because I had a kennel to keep them in. And I just was like, after I got the dogs, I'm training them. I'm like, how do I do this? And I just thought people will just donate money and then I can pay for it and then I can gift them. And I just thought it was going to be that simple. And wow, as I wrote.
You just took the next step.
I did what comes next. That's exactly right. And that was 200 service dogs ago.
Wow.
And we have not lost
200 lives changed by it.
We have not lost one veteran to suicide. Not one. It works. And yeah, it's amazing. And so that is what I get to do.
I'm so excited for the part 2 of this conversation to just focus on the non-for-profit, because I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful conversation there. Wow. Yeah. So you started your non-for-profit and just your purpose. You mentioned purpose a couple of times. Yeah. So can you please tie those two, and then what the Shannon Walker Unlimited means to you based on what I've been hearing here?
Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted a dog. I remember our very first dog. She was a little cockapoo type dog named Buttons. And I just always have had to have dogs. And so they've always just had a really special place in my life. And then to find out what I'm now doing for a living, but to be able to help people, whether it's a frustrated dog owner who totally is in love with their dog, but now they're to the point where they're fighting, in the marriage, they're fighting, there's conflict in the family. Wow. There's tears, there's stress. The dog's aggressive. The dog's so unruly. It's bringing so much stress, but they love it. And to be able to pay or to be able to help people and make a living by serving them, because people's hearts are so wrapped up in their dogs. I take it very, very seriously, but I'm so excited with Shannon Walker Unlimited to be able to help people on so many different levels so it's an open door for everybody.
Yes.
In one way or another. And so I'm very excited to be able to do that because I love the dogs and when I can help the people and the dogs, then it's a win-win. And now the dogs are not in the shelters and the people aren't heartbroken because they didn't give them up. It's just this whole cycle of what either goes good or goes bad. And so I just really help that in the industry and bring understanding.
So exciting for what is to come through Shannon Walker Unlimited, which you'll be able to reach the world and make this unification, harmony, peace, answers, peace of mind, knowledge, and even feeling accomplished, right? It's like, I successfully trained my dog. So it goes from your companion to your own personal sense of achievement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many people's self-images are wrapped up in their dogs. That's what they are. It's like an extension of them. And again, their emotions are so tied up into it. And not only that, but even physically, when we are with a dog, our heart rate is better, our blood pressure is better, oxytocin when we're sharing affection, all of that. And we use that with the veterans, we use that, but it's just, and people don't even realize sometimes it's not just our emotion of love with a dog, but it's how we are physically better when the dog is in our space and we're sharing affection. Our whole respiratory system, our chemical balance, everything is getting better because of this interaction with this other creature. And it really is, it's amazing. So it's not just our emotion and our thought process like that, but it ends up being this physical connection that helps bring peace. And it's huge and it's amazing. And I get to do this and it's awesome.
So just a quick plug in, how could somebody find Shannon Walker to access those training opportunities if they're on the verge of adopting a dog?
So there's a couple different ways. So number one, I am on YouTube, Shannon Walker, the pack leader. But if you just go Shannon Walker, I'm on YouTube. Also, my Man's Best Friend website is mansbestfriendinc.net. And so you can see what's available there. I am building out, as we speak, courses that are going to be also sold. And so they can also go to Facebook, Shannon Walker Dog Trainer, and they can like my page. And there's a lot of content. There's a lot of graphics. There's a lot of training videos and things like that. But that's also where they're going to be able to find courses and written content as that is coming out.
Awesome. And with that, Shannon is exemplifying her knowledgepreneurship effort, because now she's turning all this knowledge into tangible content that people can access. So if people out there are considering opening a business and launching your own business, leveraging on the knowledge you already have, whichever that may be, people seek you, right? As you heard in Shannon's story, people seek, we're looking for her to get answers from her, get help from her. If you're in doubt, just reflect on where are people asking you to help them with, and there may be the answer on what to pick to take your next step.
Absolutely. Just as a quick note, I was out doing what I do when I was training my dog for competition, and people would approach me and I was already helping them. I was already doing what I then turned into businesses and marketed it in now 3 different businesses. All separate, very familiar. And I was already doing it. I just then took it a step further. And that's what I'm continuing to do in a different platform.
That is super cool. Shannon, you talked about in a very storytelling way about your mentors and your coaches and people who have influenced you. You've talked about your parents. You talked about your kids. You also talked about books that you read, assessments that you took. And also you talked about when you were making this sketch of you being a dog trainer, that you called trainers that you were already connected to ask them questions. So how have you in your life gone about having those mentors, those coaches, that support system, that you don't have to have all the answers, but there are people that can help you?
So for most of my life, it was just very organic. I mean, it was you become like the people you associate with. And that's how I was very much raised like that. So I did my best to be around people that were like-minded people, Christian group, things like that. And so a lot of it was very organic. Like you said, my parents being very aware that how I was modeling my life is what my boys would adopt. So just trying to be my best self. But through getting connected with some incredible mentors, even the last couple of years, that has truly changed to where I've gone in overdrive about being my best self and learning. Just really, I didn't know, with everything that I'd accomplished, I still didn't know I had limited thinking. I didn't know that I was letting fear. If you had told me that I made so many decisions based on fear, I'd have been like, you don't even know what you're talking about. But as I was learning what limited thinking and selective conflict avoidance and all this stuff, it took me tapping into it was so a lot of the preachers online, a lot of the fruit of just, and I'm just grateful to God, because I believe, God, through being surrendered to God and asking, I want to fulfill God's purpose and will for my life, that He has lined me up. But He can't, but if God can put people in front of you, but if you don't catch hold, then they're going to go away. But I recognized the value of that. And it was really in the last year and a half, almost 2 years, where I saw the dysfunction that was created through trauma. And even though so many people would have looked and said I was successful, and I was successful, and I am successful, but I'm where I am despite my dysfunction, as opposed to but now my mindset is so different. And I didn't even know I needed to have a mindset like this, but with what I'm learning and the books and everything that I'm reading, it's about inner healing, learning and wanting to be my best self, learning to, especially when you come out of a situation, like, because life happens to all of us and we survive. And it's okay how we survive. But then as an example, when I wasn't married anymore, I continued to see my world like I was married. Even though I was out of the trauma and dysfunction, I still had the habits, and I was still functioning like with those same skills. And I had to realize that my dysfunction, it was only normal to me. It wasn't normal, and it wasn't God's best, and it wasn't the best for my children. And so it's about, and I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but it's about, for me, it's about growing and being hungry and pushing the envelope. And now my boys are going to be 28 in April. And I am more aware now than I've ever been in my life, how I have to lead them, and I have to grow and be my best self, because the more I put into me, the more I can pour out to them. And a lot of my greatest motivation now in my life is to be the best mom. Even though they're 28 and they're successful, I'm still their mom. And what I say and what I do matters. And I want to be my best self so I can give them my best so they can be their best self.
Wow. So that's part of your why.
It's my huge why. My boys have been my why since they were born.
And for my audience, this is so true for so many of us, right? And our drive. And you've mentioned being fearful, and then just continue to take your next step.
Yep. Do it afraid. That can be a cliche, but it's so real. Because what are the options? So if you don't do it afraid, then you're stuck in whatever. I mean, it's like, I'm more afraid to not move forward than if I was to stay. And you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You do. I mean, John Maxwell says, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing.
You're not growing.
Yeah.
You're not growing.
Yeah. Wow. So many people are afraid to move outside of their comfort zone. They may not like where they're at, but they're not willing to move forward into the unknown that could possibly be better, and chances are will be better. But you just have to. Yeah.
On that, one concern of people not taking their next step is being scared to fail.
Yeah.
What have you done to just do something, and if it didn't go as expected, get up and continue? How have you handled those moments? Like, give us an example.
Yeah. Well, you just don't quit. But as an example, so when I built my kennel, well, I could give you so many examples, but when I built,
give us where you said, "Oh my God, this has been one of the scariest, most fearful moments of my life with respect to your business."
So when I built my kennel, that was like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. And to build a kennel on a residential property, I had to go through a conditional use permit, which is it's the same process that Fred Meyer has to do when they go in. I mean, and I'm just a dog trainer. And now when I say that, I'm not saying it as a put down to myself, but I'm saying I was a dog trainer. I mean, I just lived in a field with dogs, and that's what I did. So to go to the courthouse or to go to city planning and have to go through everything I had to go through, and everybody that knew, I didn't have the support of, at the time I had the support of my husband in theory, but I had no support of him in any word of his mouth or effort, right? So I was met with obstacle upon obstacle. Everybody that heard what I was doing, I had everybody telling me I would never do it. I met so many people that spent thousands of dollars to build a kennel and then to find out they couldn't do it and they lost all this money. And I'd already started building the building on faith.
Wow.
And I mean, I would get a letter in the mail and I was gut punched, like another thing, or them telling me no, or you have to do this, or now you have to jump through this hoop. It took me over a year. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just had to find a way. And I just kept showing up and I kept asking questions. And then when they tell me I can't do it because of this, I say, there has to be an answer. I have to do this. So what would be, if you were going to tell me what would be the answer, tell me what it will be and I would do it. And I would push them. They'd be like, well, if you do this, then we would accept it. Okay, then that's what I'm doing. And I refused to be denied. And I was sick and I cried and I was like sick to my stomach. And I had to keep it to myself because I couldn't mention it to my husband because he would just be like, I told you so, and be so mad. And I believed God. I believed that what was inside me that I put forth in faith, I believed God. And I just did it. And I just refused to be denied. In fact, when they were pouring the concrete out there, I put down the promises of God and what I wanted for my children and what I wanted for my life and my marriage and everything. It all didn't turn out the way I wanted, but I made them hold off on pouring the concrete so I could take this sealed letter that I'd prayed for and I put it in the foundation out there.
Wow. You literally put it in the foundation.
I put it in the foundation. These construction workers are watching me and I ran out there and I dropped this letter in there and they're just shaking their heads. I didn't even care.
Wow.
I didn't care. But it was like, it's like, you just can't quit because if you quit, you will for sure fail. But even where the trajectory that you're going to go, if you might need to pivot, you might need to adjust some things. You got to use wisdom. You have to seek godly counsel, but you only seek counsel from not the neighbor that's going to give you their opinion. You seek counsel from people who have done and been where you want to go.
Yep.
That's how you have to do, because you don't let voices come to you that aren't going to give you the right answers in the fact of speaking from successful experience. And I just refuse to do it. And that's the same with anything in my life that I've ever accomplished. Wow. You know, it's like, you don't quit. It's just not an option. So not achieving, I wasn't afraid to fail because I knew I wouldn't, because I knew, and I'm not saying that arrogantly. I don't think like that. I just know I'm not going to quit and I'm going to do what it takes. And I may not know what it takes is going to be. I just know I'm going to do what comes next.
And it also, from your story, Shannon, you knew that whatever you did was going to be better off than where you were then.
Yep. My status quo was not sufficient. My status quo was not an option. Right. And that was whether it was my marriage, whether it was my businesses, whether it was my competitions, no matter what it was. It's like you have to decide what you're going to have for yourself and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not, and what you're willing to not negotiate. It's like you have to have non-negotiables.
And when the trade-off comes from it.
Yep. And I haven't always chosen the best. I learned people-pleasing tendencies. I learned selective conflict avoidance. I learned all kinds of things throughout my marriage and throughout things that I've had to learn to pull myself out of and become a healthier human being and be a healthier model a healthier human being for my children. And I didn't even know I'd overcome all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that you just have to have non-negotiables. And when you're looking at doing something in your life, you have to go, do I want to live like this my whole life? And if the answer is no, then you have to take a step forward.
Yep. Take the next step.
Absolutely.
I love it. It's so clear. Just take the next step, whatever that may be, even small or big is the next step. In that story you gave us, I'm going to ask you, if you went back then, were you expected to be successful?
My dad told me one time when he saw that I was being successful as a dog trainer, He's like, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, when you told me you were going to be a dog trainer, I thought you were just making the biggest mistake of your life. And I said, Dad, you never said that to me. He goes, oh, thank God I never said that to you. And I only thought we had no idea that I could actually make money because that wasn't part of our world or what we saw. And honestly, I don't see myself as successful. I don't see myself as non-successful. I don't think of myself in those ways because maybe, yeah, I mean, I've achieved a lot, but I know where I want to be. I know what I'm overcoming on a daily basis. I know it's like, I know the people I want to help. I mean, there's so much work to be done that's in my heart and that I have a passion for, that I don't see myself if I don't use those words like that. I don't think in those realms. I don't know how to explain. And if you were to look, well, of course I'm successful. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I have this, or whatever it might be, but there's so much more to do. Before a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was literally working 80 hours a week.
Wow.
I was booked out 6 months in dog training. If they called me tomorrow or today and said, can you help me? I'm like, yeah, I can help you in 6 months. I hated that because nobody's going to wait 6 months. I mean, it was like they needed it now. And it wasn't until I started to get my life in order and time management and margin and changing my thinking and gaining skills and all that kind of stuff that has given me a healthier, not only do I make more money now, but I have margin in my life. I'm just so much healthier as a human being, and it's allowed me time to be creative so I could start Shannon Walker Unlimited and help people. And it's like, so it's broadened who I can help and on what level, which when I was working 80 hours a week, I couldn't have done that. And so I'm not making less money, I'm making more money, but I have more time. And it's just but it's about learning and growing as a human being and healthier relationships. And this incredible mentor that I listened to, he talks about, and he was talking about your core values. And he was talking about how, my businesses and money and all of that. And I'm single. And so, I just work because other than spending time with my boys, I just work. Right. But I do have my mother and I do have some other family. And this mentor, Pastor Darius Daniels, who's unbelievably amazing, was teaching. He talks about how he was doing this teaching about how the people who mean the most of you get the least of you.
Oh, wow. Can you say that again, please?
The people who mean the most to you get the least of you.
Wow.
And I was like, that to me was profound. And I was like, you know what? Legacy isn't about necessarily your bank account. It is about who you were to them. And so that has been a real drive in my life to make sure that my children, as an example, and my mother who lives with me now, they get the best of me. They don't get all the leftovers after everybody else has used it up.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm still working on it. But it's, life is funny. And, I feel like I'm growing more and learning more, and I'm more excited about achieving because there's so much to do, because I have such a heart and a passion to help people. And with what I know and what I'm learning, it actually is just fuel in my jets, just to make a difference. And so success or not success, however people look at it. Am I successful? Absolutely. Am I grateful to God? Absolutely. But I don't see it like that because it's not over yet.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Not with all the things that you've told us and shared with us about what's to come. And then what's to come after that, right? Because you continue to take your next step.
That's right. Who knows what God has? You know what I mean? It's, but there are no limitations. The only limitations there are the ones that we put on ourselves.
Wow.
It's the limitations we have. And I've never shared any of this kind of conversation with anybody in my life. I don't.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a safe place. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
2 more questions because I have so many, but what do you hope to leave as legacy for those twin boys? What do you want them to remember?
Number one, that I loved them. I want them to remember that God created them for greatness?
Mm.
That they have a call on their life and a purpose that God put them on this earth for them to fulfill? That if I'd modeled anything for them to help them have courage, is that they can do anything they put their hands to surrender to God and to love him with all of their heart. And that with Christ, they are enough, no matter what they choose to do in their life. And that
Wow.
I hope that as I model for them what I'm learning and my love and my wisdom and everything else that I'm putting in them, that they would know that they were my greatest inspiration and my greatest joy, and they were my why.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to have to hold my tears on that one, Shannon. Thank you. And for my audience, I believe that God sends supplements. So for whoever is listening and you needed those words, take them and run with them. Thank you, Shannon. Well, the last question is, if you were to summarize this journey from Shannon, 15 years old, and all the different stages and challenges and joys that have been part of your life, how can you summarize that in one word? I know it's hard, but what would be that one word?
Endurance.
Endurance.
So when my father died, I love my mother and I've always been close to her, but my father was I was unbelievably close to my father. And my favorite scripture, so when my dad died, December 20th, 2011, my God allowed me to be there with him as he took his last breath. And I was so grateful to God for that moment, because I would have never forgiven myself if I hadn't been there for him. Even though my dad lived in another state and things like that, my mom and dad were married. He died just short of their 50 years. I talked to him every day. He was on earth. He was I need wisdom. I need strength. Dad. He was that for me. When he died, I thought it was about broke me.
Wow.
I don't even know what that really means, but I felt broken. I didn't know how I was going to do life without my earthly father on it.
Hmm.
And my favorite scripture in the Bible prior to my father passing away was, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings of eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall fall and not faint. And that was my favorite scripture in the Bible until my father passed away. And then shortly after he died, I was in a Christian bookstore and I was struggling. I was struggling on how to cope, how to learn new skills, and I wasn't leaning on my Heavenly Father as I needed to. And I looked up and I saw these 3 horses that were running on the beach, this picture. And these 3 horses are running on the beach. And it was Hebrews 12:1. It says, let us run with endurance the race marked out for us. And wow. I felt like that is my new scripture for my life.
Wow.
It's not about this moment. It's about endurance. It's about never quitting, because our life, the Bible says that it's going to rain on the just and the unjust. And we live in a fallen world, and there's pain and there's trauma and there's all of this, and good people hurt people. I mean, you can't be in a relationship without having all of that. And it's about enduring. It's about never quitting. It's about doing what comes next. It's about doing it afraid. And that is the scripture. I bought that picture. It's above my desk. It's on our Northwest Battle Buddies brochures. It is my life scripture now.
Wow.
And that is how I see everything now that I go to do. And God only knows what else he has for me. It's about endurance.
I love it. Endure.
That's
Everything
right.
shall pass.
That's right.
Wow. Shannon, wow. I had to hold my tears in a few instances. Thank you for this conversation, for sharing your experiences, those moments of pain and those moments of joy, and just coming to us in such a genuine way. For my audience, thank you for joining us to Unexpectedly Successful, the podcast to hear the raw and genuine stories of women founders who have created their business to find purpose and profit.